guys? Welcome back to the Jenks Island podcast, the only NFL podcast where we get your takes from a washed-up Division III cornerback and his friends. I'm joined again by my great friends and co-hosts Ty and Sterb. And in today's episode, we're going to be giving you guys another draft position breakdown for the 2026 NFL Draft. Last week, Ty and Sterb did a great job with the interior O-line class, and this week we're going to be breaking down the interior defensive line class right before the NFL Combine starts. It'll be today for you guys watching or listening to this on Thursday, but it's tomorrow for us. So we wanted to get these two classes out of the way before the Combine because they're not going to be too changed rankings-wise by whatever is put out on the field at the Combine. Yes, the measurements might change. The tangibles, things like that might change a little bit, and that maybe bumps around a couple guys, but nothing too major like some of the other position classes coming up. But anyways, getting into our list, we did a consensus rankings here. So an honorable mention that I had really quick before we got into it is going to be Caleb Proctor out of Southeastern Louisiana University, a guy that is one of the best pass rushers in this class at this position, but admittedly is not going to be anywhere near any of the other guys on this list at his ability to stop the run. He's much smaller. He's undersized. He is 6 foot. Let's see. I have my list here. 6'3", 280 pounds. So a lot less in size in comparison to all of these other guys, but he can rush the quarterback like it's nobody's business. He had 9 sacks this past season and had 2 against LSU. He had a really solid game against them. So he is able to do it against higher level competition, but not necessarily at the ability that all these other guys are able to in the run game. Anyways, Ty, number 8, who do you got for us?
Yeah, I had Dontay. Well, was Corleone at 8, or was he an honorable mention?
Yes, 8. Yeah,
he was at 8. Okay, yeah. So it was Dontay Corleone out of Cincinnati. I think he's more of a true nose tackle, 6'1", 335. He's got some decent size to him. He kind of reminded me a little bit of DJ Jones, the nose tackle for the Denver Broncos, right? It's kind of a first and second down guy. Not going to bring a ton in the pass rush game, but if they do throw the ball on second down, I think because he's kind of got a good low center of gravity. He's kind of shoots out really well. He's got tenacious power. He's able to, and he's got really good energy and effort. I think he's able to win pass rush, because of all the the power behind it. But he doesn't have a deep pass rush bag like some of these other guys that we have in our upper echelon of the list. I think he's so good in the run game too because he's got really good lateral speed, and that's why I see out of DJ Jones, like a bigger guy that can play the outside zones really well. The ability to flow down with blockers, kind of move down the line and still get a tackle for a loss or tackle at the line of scrimmage. I saw that a lot from him this past season, and he's really good at splitting double teams. So I think splitting double teams, it's so much about technique, right? Obviously, you can go in and think that you're going to win with power, but most of the time, 2v1, right? It is just about being able to sink your hips, kind of get into a guy and turn and get skinny and kind of break between that double team. Which is, so key in the inside zone of the run game if you're getting double teamed down or trap or anything like that. So I think Corleone, I think he's going to be a really good first and second down player. I don't think, like I said, he brings much on third down, but I like him as a run stopping nose tackle that, you can get on day 2 and have an impact kind of right away for you.
Sir, what are your thoughts on Corleone?
I wasn't super huge on him. I thought he won in ways that didn't really translate highly to the NFL level. The biggest thing for me was the lack of plan and lack of refinement as a pass rusher, especially on that end. And then he doesn't really show pretty much any ability to two gap in the run game either. So just pretty limited ceiling there. And he is an older guy at almost 24. I believe he'll be 24 going into his rookie season. So by the time, you're giving this guy a second contract, it could be 27, 28. And that's just something
that's rich from the Saints fans.
Okay.
Javon Bailey's 28 years old, and Chuck is about 27.
Tyler Shuck's got another 14 years of belting the rest of the NFC
South on this team.
Yeah. Anyways, sorry.
I'm just not concerned about age on a defensive tackle, though, if I'm going to be honest. He's a first and second down guy. He's replaceable, right? He's a day 2 guy. It's just you're not asking for. You still got me?
Yeah. You paused for a second. You're good.
Oh, I must. I don't know. Anyways, I'm not too concerned about age with a day two guy that's going to be, your first and second down run stopper. I don't know. I think at 24, I don't know. When we start to look around, like we're going to see this way more often too. Like we got to get more comfortable with it, with the way the transfer portal is going, with the way that guys are moving around. It's kind of more than the norm nowadays. See, if I see a guy that's 28 years old, like Brandon Whedon was when he came out, of course I'm going to be a little bit more concerned about that. But you know, on your second contract, if you're in your 30s, the way that guys can play nowadays, as long as it's not a running back, really, they have the longevity.
No, I think that that's definitely fair, and I think a lot of teams are looking at it that way, right? Especially with the second contract issues. I don't think that's as big of a deal now as it was in prior eras of the NFL. But right now, I think for me, I think Corleone is similar level to the guys that we're about to talk about. And so I think that kind of when you are older and you're similar in level, I think that kind of bumps you down that list a little bit. Whereas if he was older and then better, I think teams stop caring. I think that's where it kind of comes into play a little bit more. And I will say this really quick. I talked about Caleb Proctor. The rest of my guys here, I'm heavily weighing run defense over pass defense for a lot of these defensive tackles. I think in the NFL, the modern day NFL, the benefits of having a defensive tackle that can clog up the run game in too high safety or anything like that benefits very, very heavily for the defense. We saw it with Mike McDonald this past season with the Seahawks. Their defense was ridiculous against the run, even in too high safety. So you can have guys that aren't necessarily the greatest pass defender, right? But if you are a great run defender, that heavily bumps you up my board. So I just want to say that before we get into the rest of this list here as well. I don't really have anything to add to Dontay Corleone. I think he will be, like we just mentioned, I think he'll be a solid run defender in the league. I think he needs to work on the pass game, pass defense, pass rushing, but I think he will be a solid run defender. Moving on to our number 7, we have Gracen Halton, sorry. Gracen, great minds, great names, think alike. Anyways, this guy is also from OU. I'm a OU fan myself, born in Oklahoma. But I will say this, Gracen Halton is a little bit undersized, right? 292 pounds at 6'2". Now, that's not going to limit him completely. He did have 19 run stops, according to PFF this past season, and 3.5 sacks with 7 tackles for losses. His speed shows up on the tape. I really like his lateral quickness in the run game. He quickly can break through reach blocks. You see it numerous times in the run game. He'll quickly get by those guards trying to reach him, things like that, or the center as well. Really solid first step. And the knocks there that go with those things are, I think his size limits him where he is quick enough to get by players. But if he gets to the NFL and these guards and these centers get faster as the play level goes up, they're going to be able to reach him more easily. And that size limits him because they're going to be the same size as some of these college guards going against, but they're going to be much faster, more athletic and stronger. And so they can get to you and reach you and then also bully him in the run game a little bit. So I want to see his size increase a little bit because I think he lacks the ability to be a true anchor in the NFL. If his first punch doesn't work, I think he can struggle to get off blocks a little bit too. And like I said, I just want to see that his ability to be an anchor truly improve in the NFL. Ty, what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think he's the type of guy that can be, a smaller 3, but a bigger 5 tech guy. Think of Dondre Tillman for the Denver Broncos, a bigger edge rusher. And I think that's kind of where he should gravitate more towards because of his, the speed that he brings. It's elite on the interior. And, you can use him in different situations, right, where you kind of mix things up. You put Micah Parsons and Myles Garrett on the inside. This is a guy who's a little bit bigger, right, so you can move him around. I just think the biggest thing for me, kind of with what you said, bigger guys will be able to reach him because they'll be faster in the NFL. But I think he does a really good job of shocking, shedding, and swiping guys and using guys' momentum against them, right? He's already undersized compared to all the offensive linemen that he's got to play in the SEC. But the talent level, in the SEC is so high that it is almost like you're playing NFL games week in and week out. And the way that he was able to use other guys' momentum, their body, against them, they start to lean in the run game and he's shocking them down, ripping them down. I think he was a very smart player. And I think that's what you have to be as an undersized interior defensive lineman. And like I said, you're not expecting him to play in a zero. He's not going to play in a shade, right? He's going to probably be a bigger 5 tech or, a quicker 3 tech that's a rotational pass rusher. But I don't think, it's very similar to Corleone. I don't think that this is a guy that's going to be, an every down player. I think you bring him down, in third down as kind of that situational pass rush guy who, brings a lot with a lot of energy and just a lot of quickness and a lot of effort, right? He really flew to the ball a ton on tape. So I think that's kind of, what he brings you.
Sterb, do you have anything to add for him?
Yeah, I think this is a guy that if you snag him like end of day 2, he definitely makes your defensive line room better. He's clearly super polished, pretty refined. It's just a matter of ceiling and then the frame for me. I think he's pretty maxed out in terms of his, technical refinement. And then another thing you guys didn't mention is that his arms are sub 32 inches, which at 6'2.5" is like not really great, not really what you want to see. But definitely showcases the ability to, be moved around on a defensive line, give you a combination of different looks, but I don't think you're going to be able to have him there on every down and be a player that you rely on for years. So I had him like a late day 2 grade.
Moving on to number 6, Sterb, who's going to be on our list at number 6?
Yeah, so at number 6, I had this guy all the way up at, I believe I had him at number 4 on my list. But he just misses the list here on our consensus board is Domonique Orange, aka Big Citrus. For me, he's extremely reliable in the run game. We'll talk about some guys who I think showcase more violent plays, but not as on a consistent basis as Domonique Orange does. His pocket crusher in the pass game doesn't show like the freaky, pass rush upside that some of the other guys we'll get into later do. So I understand that he didn't make the top 5 for you guys. He also doesn't strike me as like a supreme athlete. I should list this guy's measurements while I'm at it. So Domonique Orange, just under 6'2", 22 years old, just under 34-inch arms and 328. I think he plays with like pretty natural leverage. The lower half is really, really strong with him. And I'm blanking on the guy, but in the offensive tackle episode, I mentioned that, strong lower half kind of invites the ability to do more with your hands and be taught more with your hands at the next level, at the NFL level. So doing that and, opening up the ability to block shed, I thought was something that, stood out to me on tape. We'll talk about this, but I think these guys are pretty similar from like, honestly, like 3 down to probably 5 or 6 for me. But I had like a mid-second grade on Domonique Orange. So what did you guys think about him?
Yeah, for me, I thought he was a really solid player. And let me say this. When you have a nickname like Agent Orange, you're immediately bumped up the list. I mean, come on, it's automatic. But jokes aside, he had 1 rep against Iowa State in the red zone that was ridiculously impressive to me. He immediately
against Iowa.
Yeah, Iowa. Sorry,
Okay.
Iowa. Yes, got that mixed up. Yes, Iowa, and immediately got through. I believe it was the guard / center. Immediately got through, made the tackle in the backfield, and it just was an aggressive and hectic play, and he just made it all happen on his own. I think he's the definition of what you look for on a nose tackle in the NFL. And really, in addition to what you said, Sterb, I just think I want to see him work on his lateral quickness and getting off of blocks. But outside of that, you nailed it right on the head for him. Ty, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, the lateral quickness, I think, is going to be a huge problem at the next level because he is in nose tackle, right? So you could just kind of run outside zone all day, and you're relying on your edge rushers to really set a hard edge. Your cutbacks there, the cutback lanes are going to be huge if he's not going to be able to kind of climb over the top and make plays. But I thought, his tool bag as like a block shedder was very creative. I mean, I saw him, not often do you see nose tackles kind of working spin moves, but he had the swims, he had the double swipes, he kind of had the clubs. Like he was all over the place. I don't think that, he's a master of one. I think he's kind of trying things out and doing a lot of things, but they were all successful. I mean, the spin, it worked out well for him. I don't love spins on the interior because, if there's guard help,
you just get that bashed.
Yeah, you just get chipped, and it's not great. But the one thing too that
Did we lose him for good
Well,
this
he reads
time?
screens.
There we go. Sorry, Ty, you
Bro.
froze for a second there again. You froze.
We were waiting on the one thing.
The one thing is, I think it was really well how, like, it was awesome how quickly he reads and reacts to screens. Like, he was all over them, almost like stopping his pass rush because he saw the screen developing and he could just get on it immediately. I mean, they even had him one time drop into coverage and he absolutely blew up an angle route. Yeah, like he read it all the way and it was just like waiting to clean that guy's clock. So he's a smart guy. It's just, that lateral speed, especially as a true nose, because I think that's what he is at the next level, given his size and the athleticism. It leaves something to be desired because of those cutback lanes and outside zone.
Yeah. I think that he's definitely, and he has the size, right? I mean, Sterb, you talked about the intangibles. That's a really big, or tangibles, I should say, and that's really big for him as a nose tackle in the NFL. Moving on to number 5 on our list, we had Christen Miller from Georgia, 6'4", 310 pounds, redshirt junior, just going to be 21 years of age at this point in time. I don't think he'll hit 22 by the time the league year starts, but
I think he will.
22, yeah, okay. So he's going to hit 22.
Right,
but that's still at this point at time, like I just don't think that's a big knock at all. Has 1.5 sacks, 4 tackles for losses, and 12 stops on the year. This is another guy that's a really good run defender, right? We talked about this. This is a class full of run defenders, not necessarily going to be the greatest pass rush interior defensive line class, but that's not really what I'm looking for. So I don't really mind that too much in this year's class. But good point of attack and first step, very athletic and laterally quick hands, able to shed blocks well and swim by defenders at times. I really loved his tackling. I think his tackling form was pretty solid. I don't think he missed a lot of tackles. Really, the things that I want to see him work on were being a better anchor in the middle and being more consistent against double teams. I saw his size and ability to stop double teams and be an anchor, but at the same time, he was missing some plays where he would lose his footing, things like that, where he's missing out on the play because he's not consistent enough against these double teams. So I want to see him improve there. But all in all, you're a defensive tackle in the SEC. You're going against really great talent, and we've seen Georgia breed good talent. I don't know if breed's the right word to use there, but just
Pause.
We've seen Georgia. Hey, I mean, they're breeding bulldogs over and over just to put them back out there on the heat on the field, and they just keep dying. So I don't know. Maybe
breeding. What are you talking about,
bro? Just get back to the problem.
Cut it. Cut that.
He's a good player. We don't need to get into this weird stuff.
I'm the editor. Anyways, also,
we're gonna release the
defensive tackles. Tapes. They make good defensive tackles down there in Georgia, and hopefully he's an addition to that group. Ty, what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I didn't have as much concern against like the double teams because I thought he fought really hard. And when you ask a defensive tackle to eat up a double team, it truly is eat it up, right? We're not asking you. It is, if you're eating up a double team and making the play, you're a Hall of Fame level defensive tackle, right? You're an all-pro level guy. Like that's Aaron Donald type of stuff, right? To beat a double team and make a tackle for a loss. With a guy like this, where you're probably going to see him again, I think this is another day 2 guy, maybe mid to late round 2. I'm happy with just the ability to eat up the double team and not really lose ground on it, right? He's not a guy that's going to get moved. I loved how much separation he created too. I think right off the bat, he's looking to create separation so he can quickly read and react. I think that helps him a ton in the run game. And I thought he was, I thought he had pretty good straight line speed for, again, he's a bigger guy, but I didn't love his lateral speed. I think his ability, once he works a pass rush move to then slip within gaps quickly, sometimes it just seemed a little slow to me, right? He would win a pass rush move and that next step, right, where it's left and then up, and it's almost that lateral to kind of that straight line speed. I thought he did really well, when he got into that straight line stride, but I think the double move there, again, it's hard as a big guy to kind of, do that, but it just wasn't. Need to pick that up because if you win a pass rush move, right, you can't have an offensive lineman then be able to counter back because you're too slow to shoot that gap. So I think he's good. I think, he's obviously trained really well there at Georgia. You could see, very form in a lot of the things that he did, right, with the separation. I mean, it says form as form gets with kind of that shock shed, but he didn't bring anything super special that I think some of the top 4 guys for me did bring. So I like him. I think he's a good day 2 pick, but and he has the ability to turn into kind of an above average starter in the long run, but I don't think he's kind of your first round Pro Bowl
Plug
All
and
Pro type of player.
plug and play, yeah. Plug and play
Yeah.
and being above average, yeah. Sterb, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I had him graded as a late 2 as well. You guys kind of voiced your concerns with him, and it's exactly what I was going to say. Like Ty said, like after he wins that initial impact, his second step tends to be he tends to read it pretty quick, but I would say his second step is awkward. He's a bit more of a unusual mover, I would say. His build is interesting, where it looks like he has short limbs and then like a big torso. He's listed at like 305, 6'4", and then almost 34-inch arms. I would kind of raise an eyebrow at the almost 34-inch arms. We'll get measurements on these guys. But like definitely an awkward frame, but this guy is going to be like a solid contributor on day 2. So I don't really see like a major glaring weakness with him.
Yeah. And that's where like getting into this top range, some of these guys might not immediately be superstars, but they're going to be, they have a high floor. That's all you can ask for when you're getting a round 2 pick. Like I think a high floor at the defensive tackle position is very, very big for teams to get, especially with teams that necessarily struggle against run defense. Like you get a guy like this and it immediately shores up your defense against the run. Moving on to our number 4 on the list, Sterb, who do you have?
Yeah, so I had this guy all the way up at, I believe, number 1 on my list. And that kind of goes closer to the consensus board. I'll let you guys talk about the cons with this guy, but I have Kayden McDonald here. He was 4th on our consensus board. And to me, it just kind of plays into exactly what you just said, where when I'm building out, or it's more of like a team building philosophy thing. In my defensive tackles, I'm looking for you to eat up double teams, be a consistent stopper against the run. I don't care as much if you win violently on one play and on the other play. I'm wondering kind of where you are. Kayden McDonald is kind of the epitome of that. He's just super, super strong, super great leverage, awesome leg drive. When he faces double teams, he's often eating them, or he's getting some push and clogging those gaps for not allowing a back to run through. He's just an absolute disruptor up front. The pass rush really isn't there at all. And it's something that I'm really not sure if it can be developed on the NFL level. It seems pretty capped. But I would like to see like a little more violence or a little more finesse, one of the two. But to me, he's just like a very solid set it and forget it, like starter at defensive tackle. Like if you're at the back end of round 1 and you need a defensive tackle to, get you to 3rd and long, 3rd and medium, this is a guy I'm pinpointing. So I'll let you guys talk about your concerns with him. But to me, he was like probably a late 1, early 2 sort of grade. And in this class, it's probably enough for me to be comfortable drafting him around like pick 20 or so.
Ty, what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think, in the run game, it's obvious, right? You turn the tape immediately, and he's a problem. He's unblockable pretty much, right? Consistent tackle for losses. As a bigger guy, he moves well in the run-stopping game. But, it's the pass rush, right? It's non-existent outside of the ability that he has as a pure power guy. He's going to try to run through you. And, it just – for me, when I'm thinking about defensive line, right, the first and foremost, right, I want a guy who can stop the run, like you said, Jenks, right? I want a nasty mauler on the inside who has the ability to run through guys. But when I'm thinking about first round pick, defensive tackles, there's that next step of, okay, can I move this guy around, right? Is he a chess piece, or is he a true nose tackle? In the case of Kayden McDonald, he's a true nose tackle. Maybe you can flex him to a 3, but not consistently, right? Because, again, he doesn't bring that pass rush, and that's that next level that I need for you to come into the top 3. He was 4 for me, and it was, I loved him when I first turned on the tape, and, the more I watched him, I think I was like, all right, like he is so limited as a pass rusher, whereas some of these other guys, that we'll get into, they bring a little bit more there. But again, unanimous All-American. He, 2 forced fumbles where he just absolutely snatches the ball out of guys' hands. Like he is consistently around the ball in the run game. flows to the ball well. It's there. It's just the pass rush for me. I think he's going to be an elite first and second down player, and he's a guy that like you're not going to take off the field because you drafted him high. Probably pay him a little bit of money because he's so good at that. And then on third down, he's not going to be as elite as some of these top tier guys can be as pass rushers.
Yeah, no, I had him at number 3 on my list individually, but I think that 4 range is perfectly fine. And like you said, Ty, it just comes with the fact that he's not the most versatile of guys on this list. He's going to be stuck in those inner gaps. Going to be a nose tackle, and I don't think he's the most athletic guy. So third down, pass downs, you're just not gonna see him out there. But in the run game, I think he's the best run defender in this class. That's what I had in my notes. When I'm watching him against the run game, right? I mean, let me say this real quick. I think we're at a point of exhaustion when it comes to talking about Ohio State prospects, because every single year there's so many Ohio State prospects and people are just like, okay, another Ohio State guy, but it gets overlooked. Like, they're the pedigree when it comes to the NFL's prospects nowadays. Every single year we have great Ohio State prospects coming in year out. And I think he's another one that's going to be added to that list that you can plug him in and play him immediately and rely on him to be a good starter, like you said, Sterb, especially in those early downs where teams are looking to run the ball. You can put him out there and he'll get you to 3rd and 6 or 3rd and 6 plus. And I think that's a major advantage when you're looking at a guy like Kayden McDonald. So that's my thoughts on him, but I don't have too much to add because you guys both hit it on the head with him. Anyways, moving on to number 3, Ty. What are your thoughts on this guy?
Yeah, Caleb Banks, and I had him on 2 on my list. I think that he's a guy. This is where you start to get into the versatility piece. He's going to be a true 3, 6'6", 330. Big guy, but he showed the athleticism and just straight up did it at Florida to play 5-tech sometimes. Be a guy that you can move around as a chess piece. I thought he, has a really awesome double swiping club. Did a pretty good job, as a bigger dude to squeeze between gaps in pass rush. Again, that was an issue with Christen Miller. He's a big guy, but can he get between the gaps? I think Caleb Banks does a really good job of that. I think he's tall. He's not like the biggest frame dude. That 330 is a little bit deceiving because he's 6'6", but I thought, for still like a solid frame guy, he brought, decent power. He's fighting to create separation. Again, doesn't do it to the level of Christen Miller because I think Christen Miller just has straight up better coaching on some of that stuff, whereas Florida's coaching staff, obviously they got fired. So it's, I think that a lot of the raw tools are there for him. I think he had a decent pass rush bag. Like, I didn't think it was anything too deep, but, you saw the hand fight for me was the biggest thing, right? There weren't the spins and it wasn't, any crazy swim moves or anything like that. I think it was just a lot of the double swipes, the club moves, a lot of hand fighting. And then I think in the run game, he does a decent job. He's not like a true mauler like Caleb McDonald is in the run game. But I think because he's so big, he's able to hold his ground most of the time, reset the line of scrimmage every now and then. The only thing is because he's so big, guys can get underneath him at times, right? So he's just got to play,
Ty got cut off there. We had some connection issues, but he's back on his cell phone and ready to go. So Ty, getting back to the Caleb Banks conversation, what else do you got for him?
Yeah, I think just at times guys can get underneath him. His pad level, he just plays a little bit too high sometimes because he's like 6'6". It's hard for these bigger guys to kind of get that bend, but I think that's the next level of maturation for him, right? Play low consistently, because when he does, he's such a big guy that he can cause havoc in the run game, havoc in the pass game. And I think just refining his pass rush tools. But again, I think it's all there. I think you can't teach the size. You can't teach the athleticism, right? The ability to kind of play 3-tech, the ability to play outside. I think for me, that's part of the reason why he was so high, is because he's got that not even a tweener, but he's got that, the flexibility to play inside and outside. And I think all the tools are there. It's just refining them with better coaching. Like I said, Florida, the coaching staff, they got fired for a damn reason. They just weren't developing a lot of these top tier talents that they had, like him and DJ Lagway. And I think that, with the right coaching, Caleb Banks can really be unlocked to become an all-pro type of interior defensive lineman. I would love to see him in Denver. I've talked about this as a replacement for JFM. I think alongside, you get that guy alongside some real veterans too, like a Zach Allen, who had a veteran like a J.J. Watt before him, and I think that this guy can really excel with a veteran like that. So, yeah, he was at 3 for me, or two for me, excuse me, but 3 in our consensus.
Yeah, I had him at 4 on my list, and the big reasoning was that he's not as finished of a product as the 3 that I had above him, which was Kayden McDonald and the other 2 guys we'll talk about next. But I think for him, I just want to see him be able to take on double teams more with his size, the size he has, and then also, like you said, Ty, just using his athleticism to refine his pass rush technique and his pass rush tree, right? If he can branch out and have actual refined pass rush moves that he can put into his arsenal, I think he could immediately become a top 15 defensive tackle in the league just with his size alone and athleticism. But I just want to see him really work on that. And like you said, I think that's going to be huge for him. And it could bump up his draft stock alone and like just his size. And we've seen that. I think on PFF, he's in the top 20 on the big board, things like that. I wouldn't have him as a first round pick just because of his
Really?
not like size. I think size makes him a first round pick. But I think if he was a normal sized guy had this skill level, I think he would be below a first round pick right now. But I think the size definitely bumps him up the board a lot.
I almost think it's the size creates the expectation of the talent and the
That could be a
performance
fair
there,
thing,
right?
yeah.
I think because he's so big that he needs to be, the pass rusher that
Mhm.
Peter Woods is, or the run stopper that Lee Hunter is, or kind of a combination of that. I really think that he is levels above a lot of these other guys in the pass rush game. I mean, Kayden McDonald, I know he's above him in the run stopping game, but I think the you can't teach the size like we said, but I think maybe we're judging him a little bit too harshly because we expect a lot because of the size.
No, I think
But I
that's
don't know.
fair. And I will say that I think his pass rush is definitely better than, like you said, Kayden McDonald and some of these other more of a run defender type guys. But I think like I said, I just think he needs to refine that pass rush because he's so athletic. He could make it 10 times better than it already is. But Sturb, what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys kind of covered most of it. I would have him graded. Well, I had him number 2 in my defensive line rankings. I would probably have him graded like at the end of the first, which in this class is probably around the same range as like Kayden McDonald.
Mhm.
But obviously, the intrigue with this guy is the upside. Like Ty said, I think all the tools are there for him, and he just plays with so much havoc in the run and the pass game that like he's going to be able to win against NFL defenders because of that unique size, unique leverage, unique strength. One big concern for him was, and I know Hammer got on you guys this last year, is that he has like almost a 25% missed tackle percentage, which is absolutely ridiculous. That's like over double of any other guys that we've talked about here today. So he does kind of seem like a bull in a china shop to me, where he does need. It's not just like a translatable refinement that you could see. Pretty much any NFL level coach getting into him. It is going to take it's probably going to be a bit of a process with him, and as a rookie, it might look a little frustrating at times. And then his run stop percentage was down at 3.2. That's like less than a quarter of where Kayden McDonald was at. That's also really not a great number. You see him in the run game, especially when he's attacking the interior, he's literally just crashing into guys, which is effective, but it's not the most. I feel like it's not the most reliable thing where he's just going to be crashing into guys rather than staying true to his gap and staying true to his assignments. But the versatility and where he can line up and just the violence that he plays with. You got to take a shot on this guy in the first round, especially in this class.
You guys had a
Yeah.
problem with me talking about breeding. It was the wrong choice of words, but Sturb just said NFL coaches are going to get into this guy, and no one better
Yeah,
than
I
I.
mean, there's levels
No
to
one
this,
better than
bro.
I. I mean, come on, come
No.
on.
Did I say
No,
that?
I'll add this about the missed tackles piece. I think I said it back then, and I'll say it now. as an interior defensive lineman, right, I want guys that can create havoc, and then I want guys in the back end that can fly to the ball, right? If an
Yeah.
interior guy can create such a push that it pauses it back, or it causes it back to pause in the backfield or have to cut back, right? That's why you have guys in the back end that will fly, where, he's going to end up too in that late 20s to 30 range, right? All playoff teams that have good defenses, that have guys that can fly to the football. He's the type of guy that takes the defense to the next level, where you said, right, Sterb, like he can cause a ton of havoc and play with kind of that reckless abandonment. And then everyone around him can fly to the ball and kind of get those tackles. I mean, to be totally honest, defensive linemen don't end up with a lot of tackles, right? Because they do the dirty work of
Mhm.
causing things to cut back, again, like I said, causing just backs to pause, period, for half a millisecond changes everything. And I think that, he has that ability to do that. And I know Hammer's going to get on. I want everyone on my team tackling, right? Yes, but there's levels to what I want my guys tackling. If you were talking about a 25% missed tackle rate from a linebacker or safety, it's a much larger concern.
Yeah, and I will say this really quick. I think it's incredible that every single year there's always at least one or two defensive or offensive guys that have all the potential in the world, but are slightly a project or viewed as like a guy that needs refinement. And they always fall to the top teams in the league, and it always is perfect for them, right? It's a perfect fit for that team.
Off injury too.
Yes, or injuries, yes, things like that. Like
Yeah.
they fall directly to those championship level teams, and it immediately bumps up the team even more. And it could be a perfect fit for one of those teams late in the draft this season. Moving on to number 2 on our list, we had Peter Woods. He was my number 2. Sturb and Ty, I don't remember where you guys had him on your list. I think we all had him at, or Ty, you had
Had
him
him
at
at
Ty and
3.
I had him at 3.
3 and 3. Okay, and I have a 2. Okay. Yeah, I think to me, he's 6'3", 310 pounds, junior, only 20 years old as well. So he's younger. 21 run stops this season, 3 sacks, 3.5 tackle for losses. He's extremely, extremely athletic, solid in the run game. I like his will to fight through blocks. He has a solid anchor. I do want to see him improve that a little bit, but he is still young. He's definitely going to improve that in the league. He's able to stuff the middle on short down and distances. There was a couple, I think I want to say it was against Georgia Tech. He had one really good run stuff on 4th and 1 that I really enjoyed watching on tape. That's something I want to see from these defensive tackles. And like I said, he's young and will develop. Cons for him is that he doesn't have the biggest, most refined pass rush tree. He does rely on the bull rush a little bit too much at times, but I think once he starts getting a few more rush moves into that arsenal, he's definitely going to be a really big threat in the pass game. And then I think he tries to make plays and takes himself out of positions at times. And that's not what we need from a defensive tackle sometimes. Sometimes you just got to be in your spot, doing your job, and it will allow other players to make the play. Like you said, Ty, like you don't need your defensive tackle to necessarily make the end play, the tackle that ends the play. But if you disrupt the play, if you are getting to where you need to be and it makes the running back bounce back towards the other side of the field into a defensive end or things like that, that is immediately a huge benefit to your defense. And I think Peter Woods is going to be a guy that can be that to a defense wherever he is drafted. My only notes for him was that I don't think he's a top 10 pick where I've seen him getting mocked to like the Saints at number 8. As a Saints fan, if we took Peter Woods at number 8, I'd be livid. I'd be pretty upset because I don't think he's an immediate superstar, right? Which is what we kind of expect from top 10 picks. Not necessarily superstar, but you expect above average to high end play. And I just don't think he could be that right away. Now, a year or two down the road, maybe he is, but right away, top 10 pick, I don't see him as that, and I don't necessarily want to see the Saints take him at 8. But Sturb, what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, going back to, I guess, this previous season, like this was a guy that you would constantly see at the top 5 of, like summer scouting big boards. And it was really just like the block shedding that, stood out. I watched this guy a bit over the summer. I don't really like to get too deep into film because, those players aren't finished products. And I believe the film that's most important is the most recent film. Peter Woods this season in Clemson as a whole, right? It was just kind of very, very stale compared to, previous seasons.
Mm-hmm.
He still shows that flashes that unique ability to shed blocks with the run game. That's like really, really good. His get off is really good as well. But his his when he got assigned double teams or when teams took him on with double teams, I don't think he really showed flashes there. I think it was just a lot of meh. Guys pushing him off the ball, and then like you said, the pass rush. It's not like necessarily the bag that's just a concern with me. Is that he doesn't bring a lot of violence or tenacity to the pass rush either. So that, as well as being not super refined, relying on bull rush too much. So yeah, I'm with you there as a Saints fan. I wouldn't like to see him drafted at 8. I understand the upside play for him. He's still pretty young. But to me, he graded out like pretty similar to Banks in terms of like, probably a late 1, early 2, comfortable with him in like the mid 20s in this draft.
Ty, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely think he's a first round pick, but like you, Jenks, I don't think that he's quite the top 10 talent, because I think you're going to be asking him to do something that he can't, right? He doesn't bring that tenacity, like Sterb mentioned, in the run game or the pass game. And that was kind of my biggest concern with him, right? He's not a mauler. He's not going to do anything like that where he's going to be able to reset the line of scrimmage. And more often than not, it almost looked like he just was losing some of those battles when it came down to being a run stuffing guy. I think they kind of helped him out a ton by moving him around. He kind of is. He's so athletic. He's got such a high motor that you can play him a lot of places, right? They had him in stand up in a 0. They had him out at wide, in a 5 and a wide 9. He's obviously a true 3 tech, but I think in those positions, it was a lot of loop blitzes, which makes it a lot harder on college level offensive linemen, right? We talked about this in the interior offensive lineman group. If guys can read, loops really well, that's a pro for them, because we don't really expect that out of a ton of these college level guys, right? It's harder for them to read some of those things. So I think they were almost aiding him a lot with their scheme. And even when he was, he was awesome as a looper because he's so athletic, but I think sometimes he just messed around with guys too much, right? He wasn't getting off of his pass rush move too quickly. I think he does a great job of doing, sometimes that club arm over move, but he wasn't doing that quick enough for me or consistently enough for me. And that's kind of why he fell behind Banks for me. I mean, I think, the block shed is definitely such a big pro for him, because he's really athletic. So he's able to work over the top, he's able to throw guys by, kind of that, smaller, more athletic type of archetype where you have to use the other guy's body against him, with shocking and shedding, with the double swipes, etc. But I think, Jenks, you brought this up. I think the biggest point of it all for him is it seems like he has a strong upper body and he's able to do that, hand fight and kind of work it, but the lower half or his trunk is just not. I think that he just kind of lacks a little bit of a power in his base, and it's certainly something that he can work on, but it's not, and just getting stronger in the NFL. But it is not a strength of his game. And you think about again where teams are projected to take him right now. 21 teams are going to talk to him, and you imagine that 21 of those teams are probably the top 21 teams in the draft, or maybe 2 to 22 or wherever it may be. He's going to go high, and I just don't know if it's a great situation for him. I think, again, he's a guy that would thrive on being on a playoff defense where he can grow and continue to develop, different pass rush moves, develop as a young man. That's kind of it, right. He's young and he still has a lot of room to grow. But the problem is, you grow in size, do you lose that athleticism? Right? We talked about that
Yeah.
last episode with a lot of the offensive linemen. Do you lose the weight? Do you lose the power? Do you gain the weight and you start to lose the athleticism? It's a fine line, and if he gets too big, then he starts to lose what makes him truly great. Is that ability to be a chess piece, play across the board, in a 0 as a stand-up guy, in a 3 tech, or out wide as an edge rusher. So I am at 3. I mean, it was close with Banks, but I think there's a little bit more to be desired with Peter Woods.
I think that's fair. And that leads us right into number 1, Ty. Number 1 consensus player on our board. Who is that going to be?
Yeah, it's gonna be Lee Hunter. And this is a guy for me that I think kind of, maybe I just wasn't watching enough Texas Tech, but did come a little bit, um, he snuck up on me a little bit, right? You know the names like Caleb Banks and Peter Woods, but you start to watch the tape a little bit more, and you just realize that this dude is an absolute mauler. I think he has the ability to play, nose tackle or three tech, right? You can kind of move him around in that hole, from a 0 to a 3, and because of his pure size. But I think he, has a little bit of a, sneaky athleticism for a bigger guy. I think, his other teammate that on the other side, I watched, Skylar Gill Howard. He's more that athleticism guy, whereas, Lee Hunter is more the true power. I thought he was an absolute demon as a pass rusher. I know a lot of people are a little bit, lower on him because his pass rush bag isn't the deepest, but he brings so much of the power that he brings in the run game into the pass game. I mean, you watch the BYU film, he is absolutely throwing one of their guards back into the quarterback and just consistently bodying these guys. And I mean, the question could be asked, oh, he plays bigger guys in the NFL, yada yada. I think he's such a strong guy that he's going to be able to bully guys no matter at what level it's at. Obviously developing some of those deeper pass rush moves will be great for him, but I think, he plays with so much power. He's got great pad level, that it helps him drive out a ton in the run game. The pad level is obviously an awesome thing because it helps you shoot out and reset that line of scrimmage. Like I said, sneaky athletic, he retraces on screens a lot, kind of just that high motor type of defensive lineman that you want, just the big fella moving and getting out there on screens. But I think the separation was another big thing for me too. I think he often, when he is working some of these guys back, you see that true lockout, and that's that ability to kind of read and react. As a bigger guy, it is obviously super important that he can see and react. Rather than having to react at last minute because he isn't the most athletic. But I think just a mauler. I mean, immediately, like you watch play after play where I was just like, oh my God. And he was, I felt that with McDonald a little bit in the run game. I felt that with Hunter in both facets of the game and on most plays with just the way that, he was able to maul. And I think honestly, he made the job for David Bailey and those edge rushers for Texas Tech a lot easier. I think David Bailey is awesome, and I think he's going to be a top 10 pick. But I think when you have a strong guy like this on the interior, it makes everything so much easier because you get put on an island out there because they have to double team a guy like this. So I loved Lee Hunter. I really didn't have any concerns outside of he's not a crazy athlete and just needs to develop a little bit more of a pass rush bag, but there's so much power there that it's like if that's his bag, he's gonna dominate at the next level.
Sterb, anything to add?
Yeah, I have a little more concerns with Hunter than you guys do. Again, I see him as a really good player. Like I would have absolutely no problem taking this guy, like at the end of the second round, mid in the second round. Like Ty said, he holds his own against double teams. He's really, really good in that aspect. And we mentioned, him kind of freeing up David Bailey, Romello Height, those guys on the outside. The arsenal is, limited but effective, like Ty said, in the pass rush. That's something I'm not really too concerned about. What concerns me is the consistency for him. And maybe I could have gotten, a couple bad eggs on the film in the games I was watching. But for me, he seems to go quiet for, kind of long stretches. And that could be just like, them kind of scheming him into kind of like a more sacrificial role, allowing Romello Height and David Bailey to run free. But I didn't see – there were games where, he kind of goes quiet for a lot of plays. And then, he has a highlight where it's just like, holy shit, this guy came out of nowhere in accordance to the rest of this drive. And I mentioned that like his highlights are probably the best of the group. Ty mentioned the one play against BYU. It's absolutely ridiculous. And then another concern is that I wouldn't say like bend is the most important thing for a defensive tackle, but for me, it's like if a quarterback changes direction, he was more prone to not chase him down than these other defensive tackles. And his change of direction really wasn't that great in accordance to like someone like a Domonique Orange, even like a Gracen Halton, for example. And another thing with him is that like he is like super, super strong, probably the strongest, if not one of the strongest defensive tackles that we're talking about here today. But another aspect of like the age, the age, not like a super important thing when it comes to like contribution, because this guy is going to be 28 by the time he's on a second contract. He's going to be 24 by the time the season starts. But if you think about it, he's had average age in college is probably like 20 to 21 that these guys are playing against. So he's had like 3 extra years to put on strength and become more refined. And that's something that you kind of have to take into account when you're comparing him to these other prospects. So for me, I like him probably in the middle of round 2 in this draft. I don't see him as like a first round player, but I definitely get the upside play there. So
Yeah, I think he'll end up going. I think he'll end up moving his way into the first round. He's been slowly moving up, and I think we'll kind of see that continue through the combine and then the post combine draft process. But I think his tackle for loss production just it speaks for itself when in the run game, especially. This guy, like you said, Ty, is just pretty tenacious at times, and Sterb. I mean, I didn't go through and watch a lot of games, so maybe like you said, like we're watching different stuff, things like that, and we get a different impression. But I think he'll be a solid defensive tackle in the league, and so I had him at number 1 just because, like we said, I think he has a better pass rush ability than a guy like Kayden McDonald, and he's really really good in the run game. So I think he's the top guy, and he was number 1 on my list. I'm excited to see what he does, especially with the combine tomorrow and seeing what if he's like quick, if he's more athletic than we kind of thought he was. Maybe that bumps him up some boards too. But I think this guy's going to move up a lot of boards on people's lists. So we'll see how that goes throughout the rest of the offseason. Anyways, guys, do you guys have any closing thoughts for the defensive interior lineman episode?
yeah, you kind of mentioned with like the combine. I think we might see some double counting in terms of like athleticism and underwear Olympics, especially with like someone like Caleb Banks. Kind of strikes me as someone who's going to like absolutely not that they're not on his radar, but stand out to scouts on paper, stand out to draft analysts on paper, and be like, damn, this guy was injured for the rest of the season, but look at him now. He's like absolutely destroying the combine. He's got all the size you want. It could be like a double counted sort of situation, but I'm really eager to see where he kind of rises or falls tomorrow.
Ty, what about you?
Yeah, one quick plug. Check out Friday. The Orange Crushing podcast will be coming out. I'm going to be talking a bit about some of these defensive linemen and the offensive linemen from last week that I think would be, that we broke down that I think would be good fits for Denver. Obviously, I talked about, loving Caleb Banks, Lee Hunter's another guy. But I think, overall, this class is at the defensive line position. And I think the interior offensive line position as well. Very, very deep. I think there's a lot of guys that you can get on day 1, day 2, even early day 3 that are going to be contributors for really good teams as rotational pass rushers, as run stopping defensive linemen. I think it's rare to see an interior defensive lineman class be this deep in the pre-draft process, right? Obviously, post-draft is an entirely different thing, but yeah, I think this is pretty rare, and especially with some of the versatility we're seeing from these guys too.
Yeah, I'm and like to that note, I watched tape on a guy Zane Durant, and he wasn't on our list. And I don't think he was really necessarily close. Like it was such a deep class that you had a guy like Zane Durant. I think I got him in like a 4th or 5th round in the Saints mock, and I was like, this is a solid pick for them there. And he's probably 3 to 4 guys below our lowest guy on this list. So there's a lot of guys in this class you can get, and you can feel confident in your team making that pick because it's such a deep class and they're well-rounded players, or if not well-rounded, good enough in one thing that they're serviceable and could be plug and play guys at certain aspects of the game. So really exciting class here. And we don't always get to say that for these 2 classes, the interior sides of both lines. You don't always get to say they're exciting, but this year, both sides are pretty deep and exciting classes. With that being said, next week, we're going to be recording and posting the tight ends episode. As well as recording, and I think we might post that one a little bit later. We're going to record our free agency predictions episode as well, giving our top free agents for the league year or league off season, and then making predictions of where they're going to land. So keep an eye out for that. Make sure to check out Sterb and Ty's interior offensive lineman episode from last week, and then all of the other future draft episodes coming up. You guys know where to find us on social media at Jenks Island and wherever you get your podcast at Jenks Island. We'll see you guys next week.